Today, we want to talk about the life cycle of these blueberry plants. We're now in the fall. Everything's kind of calming down for the year, but these plants are still working. And the thing is, if they don't do the things they've got to do right now, we won't have blueberries next year. So these plants are putting on the shoots. They're getting ready to go dormant, but it's nice to know what has happened to them. So we're going to go all the way back to the first of the year, bring it all the way through, and see what our expectations have been for these plants and how they did. Well, here we are in October here in South Carolina, and things are starting to cool off just a little bit. It's important to remember that the number of chill hours available to the plants here in the South is much, much less than it is in the North. And blueberries require a certain number of cold hours in order for them to produce berries in the spring. So let's go back to the first of the year and let's watch and see what it is these plants have done all year long. Now, if we go back to January, what we would have seen is we would have seen all of these plants with no leaves on them and nothing but stems coming up and sticking up out of the ground. And those stems would have turned a red color, and they're actually quite beautiful. But we'll get back around in just a minute to what it was that happened when everything began turning red here in the field. We have to go back a little bit to see what it is that brought us up to that moment in January and February when things were just about to break loose and we were getting ready to see the process start for making these blueberries. It's very normal for the plants, and it's important for the plants to go dormant in the wintertime, and they lose all of their leaves. And it may look like they're not doing anything, but they really are. They're preparing for next year's crop of blueberries. So the springtime rolls around and things start to warm up a little bit, and the blueberry plants begin to wake up from their dormant state. One of the first things that we're going to notice is that some of the growth that started last year is actually going to be supplemented by new growth that's coming out in the springtime as well. It's not long after all of that new growth starts coming around that we begin to start seeing flowers coming out on the blueberry plants. Now, most of the flowers that we see are going to be white in color, but I've actually got a few varieties that produce pink flowers. And one of the most important things that can happen at this time when those flowers start to come about is they've got to be pollinated. And if that doesn't happen, well, guess what? We're not going to have blueberries. So I've got a couple of beekeepers that come in. They take care of the bees, they harvest the honey, and believe me, this is some of the best honey you will ever have in your life. It's a win-win situation. I get to have my blueberry plants fertilized so that we will produce berries, the bees get food, and then after all that happens, we get honey. Well, after the bees have done their job and the flowers are fertilized, at the base of that flower, we will begin to see teeny, teeny little green blueberries starting to grow. This is really fascinating for me. I love watching this, and the thing of it is there are different varieties that will produce berries at different times of the year. I actually have some plants that will begin producing berries that you can pick around March and April, and then I have some that don't get finished up all the way up until June and July, and sometimes even August. So after we see those little teeny green blueberries begin to show up, the next thing we do is we just kind of sit back and we watch, because they're going to get larger and larger and larger. But one of the things that's really important at this time of the year especially is to make sure those blueberry plants have all the water they need. They're going to need it to produce those big, nice, round, plump blueberries. So irrigation is a very, very important part of making sure these plants are healthy and taken care of, especially during the critical time of the year when they're actually beginning to make berries. From the time those little teeny blueberries first show up till the time that it's ready to pick them can actually be a couple of months. Some move faster and some move slower. But all of a sudden, one day, we walk out here in the field and what had been green blueberries the day before have suddenly turned, and it's time to start looking to pick them. Now I will tell you, you don't really want to pick those berries as soon as you see them turn blue. You actually want to give them a little bit of time. I've noticed that if you just let them sit for another couple of days after they turn blue, they'll be a little bit sweeter and they'll actually taste a little bit better. And one of the nice things about blueberries is that once a plant starts to produce, it doesn't just produce them all at once. It takes several weeks for them to finally stop producing. So what you find yourself doing is pretty much picking berries almost every day. Now the plant has done what it was supposed to do and produce those berries, but things are not over yet. It's really just getting started, because even though it could be June or July, we're wanting that plant to do certain things to make sure that it produces berries next year. Once that plant has finished putting all of its energy into producing the blueberries, then it'll start doing something that's kind of interesting. It starts putting out brand new growth, and you'll see those produced, and sometimes they come up from different places. Most of the time it comes out of a little stem at the very bottom of the plant. Sometimes it comes up a little bit more from the top, and sometimes you'll even see them come up totally off to the side, up out of the dirt, that you never saw that coming. Because one of the things that's important to realize is that the reeds, and I call them reeds, they're the stems that come up out of the plant. So one of the things that's important to realize is that the reeds that produced this year are done. They're not going to produce blueberries again. So what we're wanting to make sure happens, and to help the plant along, is to make sure that these new reeds come along. And it's also at this time that we really start putting on a little bit more fertilizer to help the plant at this moment when it's really starting to grow. It's now at this time that the plant begins the process of gradually moving towards fall and moving towards going dormant. It hasn't happened yet in this field. Like I said, it's October. It's going to happen here in the next few months, but all of these plants are going to turn red, and the leaves will turn red, and it really gets quite beautiful. If you look at the plants right now, you'll notice that a lot of the leaves are the ones that came out in the springtime originally. So these leaves have been out all year long, and they look a little beat up sometimes. So that pretty much brings us around back to the beginning. We've gone from flowers in the springtime to producing berries, to new shoots coming out and producing new reeds, to the plants going dormant, needing those chill hours to make sure that they produce and get ready for the springtime when they come out of dormancy and start the whole thing over again.